Well, then we go back to how is this done, and the best answer is it depends. Okay, depends on the organization. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Edda. If she's got any questions, she can ask. And I'm going to promote almost everybody in our group here, so please write down your question and then take yourself off mute when I ask you to, and then ask the question, put yourself back on mute. So Edda, why don't you start us off?
Okay, I just don't see anything on the chat, but I see one question on the question and ask part, and this is about job rotation. Can you say it? What are the reasons for rotating jobs every 2 hours, and would you do that if there are no ergonomic issues? What do you think?
Okay, so the
Yeah,
original...
well, Jeff, I think at Toyota, what I was told is that in the production area, they do change jobs every 2 hours, and they cycle them, I think, over 2 weeks as well. So,
No, that's okay. First of all, in Japan, they don't do job rotation. I'm not sure if they do it at all, but it would be very rare in Japan in production. In the United States, the original reason that they did job rotation at NUMMI was because of ergonomics. And in this case, they're dealing with manual tasks that are repeated every minute or so. And they had older people than in Japan. In Japan at that time, all the people were very young. And for older people, the ergonomic issues started to show up as carpal tunnel syndrome and the kinds of problems that you have from repetitive motions. So it was mainly because of repetitive motions. When they introduced it in NUMMI, what they discovered was that people liked it, that they liked the variety of a different job every 2 hours. And it also helped to help communication within the team. It helped develop team leaders. It helped Kaizen when we're problem solving. I'm not just trying to focus on my own job, but I can understand your job because that's also my job part of the day. So it helped in many different ways. And then when they started up the Georgetown, Kentucky plant, they continued the practice of job rotation from NUMMI, and they found all the same kinds of benefits. It's been a point of controversy for the last 30 years in Toyota because the Japanese managers believe that job rotation, they can see the benefits for ergonomics, but they say solve the problem, design the job so that there aren't ergonomic issues. And what they'll say is if I have 4 people working first shift and 4 people working second shift, I've got 8 people doing this job, which means more than 8 times the variability compared to 1 person doing it, or 2 people if it was 2 shifts. And they say in Japan it's very easy. You have 1 person per shift. They do the job. If there's a change to standard work, they get together, they talk about it, they agree on it, it's done. And they say that there's much less variability, much less time spent on communication and miscommunication. So they've been encouraging elimination of the job rotation in America for a long time. It's been tried at various points, it's been proposed, and basically the workforce rebels because in America particularly we really like it. And this is a different culture, so I would say it's something cultural more than a policy at Toyota.
all right, I'm going to ask Hedia if she's got any questions. Dennis Golick, Charles Kai, and then I'll open it up to everybody else. Hedia, any questions? Let's go to Dennis Golick. Any questions?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. The question I have has to do with the group leader and development of people. Is the group leader, do they have a lot of formal meetings with people to develop their people, or is it through daily activities and their interactions where they develop people? Thank you.
It's so Toyota uses the term on-the-job development, and that's through daily interactions. They do have formal classes, and there's a long list. If you look at the curriculum, it looks like a master's program at a university, although each class is not a semester. It might be a week or so. And they're constantly going through some sort of training. and they might have been through problem-solving training 5 times, formal problem-solving training. But any training they've gone through is learn and do. So if you learn problem-solving for 3 days in a classroom, you do it for 3 months on the job. In a Toyota plant, because there's so much intensive, concentrated focus on developing people at all levels, and there's a very strong human resource function, there are people constantly watching the group leaders and coaching them, and the group leaders are constantly watching the team leaders and coaching them, and looking for future team leaders and coaching them. I was in the plant in the UK, which is kind of the analogous plant to Georgetown. It was the first European plant, and it's been around for close to 30 years. And in that plant, each person we'd meet at a management level would tell us a little bit about their background. And say out of 15 people I met who were in high-level positions, they're general managers or managers, there's only one did not come from the production worker level. All the rest had been started out as production workers and worked their way up. And because they were getting that intensive, on-the-job daily training that you can't replicate by hiring somebody from the outside. So it's on-the-job development. Now, the reason for the improvement kata and coaching kata is because many organizations are at the beginning levels of really intensely developing people and their ability to follow PDCA, the scientific method. So for beginners, you need a much more explicit, formal process where you meet every day for a certain amount of time, you have certain questions you ask. You need that structure. As you learn, then that structure will be relaxed. In the Toyota system, a lot of the coaching that happens is spontaneous, on the job. It just naturally occurs during the day.
Well, thank you, Dennis. Dr. Charles Kai in China, go ahead.
At airport in Hong Kong, a lot of people around.
Okay. Hi, Charles.
Go ahead.
No questions.
Oh, no questions.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Charles. Okay, let's open it up to anybody. If, you know, I'm going to wait for somebody to take themselves off mute, ask the question.
There's a question on the chat. May I ask?
Go ahead, Edda, go ahead.
Okay, from Saravana Kumar. What is your suggested way to pick up topics for daily Kaizen? Who picks them up? Do we focus on the 7 ways to pick up topics for daily Kaizen?
Okay, so that's one of those it depends questions. It depends on what you're trying to do, what stage of evolution you are. If you look at the chart that had the heart in the middle that Jonathan has been using from P&G, he's saying on one side there's, okay, you're going to go back to the heart, George? Yeah, okay. So on, I'm not sure it's my left or your right, but on the SDCA side, those topics occur because of problems during the day. And if you have an and-on system where when there's a problem, you stop production, or you at least pull a cord and alert the team to a problem, or the machines have sensors and they stop themselves in an automated process. So if there's stops happening, then what you would do is, you might look at the stops and say, this is where we had the most problems today. Let's focus on this problem. In a Toyota plant, they'll use the and-on pulls from the team members who are pulling a cord, and they'll notice that in one position, again, if they're rotating jobs, it's different people, but in one position, there were 20% of the line pulls today. So they'll go and investigate that. So those are driven by the rear view mirror, by what has happened during the day. And then on the right, on the other side, the PDCA side, which is driven by Hoshin Kanri, that's, again, looking through the front view mirror and the front windshield. And in that case, there are targets that are set in some way. In Toyota's case, is through Hoshin Kanri, which is the topic of the the next chapter, the next section, which is gives you your targets for the year, your performance targets. We want you to elevate your performance in quality, in productivity and safety, whatever they are. What are the critical performance targets that are tied to the overall business objectives for the year? In that case, you're selecting based on a direction set that you've agreed to at the beginning of the year. And that's more like the way the Toyota Kata is set up, which is don't go around looking at the 7 wastes and saying, oh, look, there's some wasted motion, let's chase that. Oh, look, there's some extra inventory, let's chase that. There's some rework, let's go chase that. And then you're running in every direction.
Kind of like squirrel.
Like a squirrel, yeah. Well, that kind of running in all kinds of directions to some degree happens in the study, do, check, act cycles, in the run to daily target, because you're responding to what happened today. So that's a reactive system. Although you're encouraged to pick, say, one problem, not, many things happen, but pick something that was the biggest problem that day. But that's to reduce the variation of the process, to stabilize it. And then the PDCA cycles are more like the improvement kata, which says pick a direction, then put your blinders on and ignore most of the waste you see around you and focus only on those wastes that will be obstacles to achieving that challenge that you've set for yourself. It may be we want to run 50% more product without adding any additional people or any additional capital. And that's a big objective for the year. And for the whole year, we're going to keep focusing on that and focusing on that and focusing on that and overcoming obstacle after obstacle and setting target condition after target condition. But it's all focused on that one goal.
Jeff, it almost seems, Jeff, that the company's ability to put those blinders on is going to indicate what problems they're going to go after.
Well, the problems indicate what problems you go after, but yeah, you're right. The specific obstacles, the obstacles are the problems, and the specific obstacles will be related to that challenge, but following the kata, following the improvement kata, is very, very dependent on putting those blinders on. If you set that objective, but then you react to whatever problems come up every day, then you're not learning the improvement kata, and you'll fail at it.
All right, let's open it up again. Take yourself off mute, ask a question, put yourself back on mute, please. Anybody?
Yes, thank you for giving beautiful, very, very elaborate information on coaching kata. It seems like you are saying that identify a roadblock and then do experiments on those roadblocks to find what the actual effect is versus what the anticipated effect was, and then figure out how do you validate that over a period of time. Comments, please.
I don't know if that's a question, but that's what you're trying to do, is obstacle by obstacle, you're experimenting until you find some way of overcoming that obstacle. And you're trying to develop the discipline of not quitting, not giving up until you've overcome that obstacle. Because what we tend to do, like I said, is jump around like George's analogy of a squirrel, just running from place to place. And we don't have enough focus to actually really solve the problems that we have to solve, that is, overcome those obstacles. When we list an obstacle, it's often a complaint. Well, we can't do this because we're different, because the doctors have all the control around here, because the equipment is designed by vendors and we can't do anything about the equipment. So usually often the obstacles are things outside of our control. Whereas within the improvement kata, you're focusing on those things you can control, but you don't know, you have to believe you can make a difference, you can control them, and you don't know how yet until you start to experiment. And if you keep on experimenting with determination, and that's what a lot of what Taichi Ono was trying to teach, that focus, that determination, I can do this. If I keep working at it, I will do something that I thought was impossible.
Right. Okay, any more questions, please? Keep on going.
Hi, I have a question for Jeff. The question is, as a coach, I could choose to use the improvement kata method, the Toyota kata method, or I could choose to do something with an A3 form following, the method that Jon Shook describes. So what would the criteria be for deciding one versus the other?
Once again, I don't have any real criteria. Well, the criteria, if I was Mike Rother, the criteria I would use is how advanced am I? How advanced are my clients? If my clients are essentially doing what the improvement kata says using the A3 process, if they're meeting every day, if they're being challenged on their short-term target condition, if they're running experiments, if they're checking the results of each experiment, if they understand the current condition very well, if they have a coach who's asking them the right questions every day, and you're doing that within the A3 format, which, by the way, the A3 format, if you watch any good coach in Toyota use A3, most of what they're writing down is on flip charts and on whiteboards. It's not the A3 itself. The A3 is a summary document that they update periodically to show other people. But they have other places that they're writing things down, and they have charts and they have graphs, and it might be a whole wall. So it ends up looking more like the improvement kata anyway. But if they're following the steps, the direction is clear, the understanding of the current condition is deep, they have intermediate target conditions, so they're acting on the process, and they have a picture of what they think the process needs to look like in order to achieve the outcome. If they're running experiments and checking those experiments, if they're doing those things when you're using the A3 method, which is what Jon is teaching you to do, then there should really be no difference between the two, except for exactly the words you use and how you document things. The reason that Mike went to all the trouble of creating this improvement kata and coaching kata is because what he would see in most cases, not all cases, and it depends on the coach, but in most cases the A3 became a kind of quick race to get to the end line and to fill out the form, and skipping over almost all the steps of the scientific method in between. So to get people to follow a deliberate method and practice it every day, he developed this structure. And when you read Jon's book, Managing to Learn, he's describing a case where someone is getting daily coaching from a very experienced coach, and Jon personally got that kind of coaching in Toyota. And he had learned that the A3 is an unfolding process and story. But again, if you're using it in that way, I believe that you, in doing A3 right, are in essence following the same discipline and accomplishing the same goals as the improvement kata.
So Jeff, I could venture a guess. I'm going to ask you the same question. I think 95% of the companies out there would start with the improvement kata and do it right from the basics. What's your guess? Any guesses?
I don't know what the percentage is. I think what Mike decided, and W3 I believe practices this as well, not as strictly as Mike, but Mike's decision was that when he gets contacted by a company, or when he was doing more consulting, which he's doing less of now, but he was doing more consulting, the first thing he would say to someone who contacted him is, before I do anything with you on the improvement kata, I need for you to go to my 3-day course. And at the end of the 3-day course, let's have a discussion about what you learned and about whether you want to make a commitment to this. So he created a little hurdle, and if they came to the course, and particularly if they came with a group of people, and if one of those people was a vice president or somebody at a high level, then they would have a discussion about putting together an advanced group. And if they said, no, we can't get our vice president to do this, he's too busy, and we want to start at the process level, then Mike would not work with them. They had to put together an advanced group, so that was the next hurdle. And in that way, he kind of whittled away. So out of 10 calls that he got, only one of them might actually lead to a client. So he was selecting his clients so they had a much better chance of success. And he had a pretty good success rate. But 9 out of 10 probably would have.
All right, anybody else? Thank you, Jim, for that question.
There are questions on the chat and question and answer. May I ask?
Please don't ask if you can ask. Go.
Okay. Okay, so question from Marcel. In your summary, there was mentioned to replace daily huddle meetings with more effective educational and problem-solving meetings. Can you provide an example? Should this meeting be with entire plant, led by plant manager, or in smaller teams, led by team leader?
No, so I obviously confused him, but I was just saying that the daily huddles can be made more effective through the kata method. If you learn a good problem-solving method, then you can make these huddles into an effective meeting. The role of the daily huddle in Toyota is simply an information sharing meeting, and it typically is about 10 minutes long. So you can't do a lot in 10 minutes. So what the group leader is doing is presenting, here's where we were yesterday, here's some of the problems we had, here's what's going to happen today, here's what's on our plate. Any human resource issues, like we're going to have to run an extra half an hour today for this reason, or we're going to have a especially high concentration of these difficult hybrid vehicles to build. You know, that's the sort of thing that happens in the huddle. The coaching has to happen outside of that huddle. The coaching has to be one-on-one. And say, maybe they're still 10-minute meetings, but you're meeting with the process owner, you're meeting with the key learner, and you're going through what they did yesterday, what they plan on doing today, why, what did they learn from yesterday, what are they going to do today. So that's the coaching process is happening spread over several, maybe an hour or 2 hours of the day across different people. So that coaching is one-on-one. The huddle is gathering the whole team together, and it's mostly information sharing. What I was saying is that companies put in place that huddle thinking that that huddle is going to lead to problem solving or lead to employee engagement, and that's not really the purpose of the huddle, and it doesn't work for that purpose well.
Thanks, Etta. Keep on going. Take yourself off mute.
Okay, under question and answer from Rui. I know one pharma company that flattened the organization to 3 layers at over a dozen sites, integrated lean principles, and they are successful. Any comments?
I don't know. Yeah. Comment is congratulations on whoever they are, wherever they are, whatever they do, whatever they did. But I don't know.
That was a quick answer. Keep on going, Ed, if you have more.
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. All right, anybody, take yourself off mute. Ask the question, put yourself back on mute, please.
Hello, Wolfgang here.
Wolfgang from Germany. Hello.
Hi. From Austria. Hi.
Ah, Austria, yes.
Would you consider a structured and focused daily improvement on group level combined with the necessary coaching to develop the people as the most important part of the lean leadership before all the other activities with daily meetings and finding 7 wastes?
I would say yes. As I mentioned, there is a kind of logical sequence of activities, and the people that I know who are the best at it, who are usually the students of Teiichi Ohno and they're Japanese, they always start with a challenge, and they always start with the senior leadership, and they start with a few people who they're developing who are going to often become the head of the lean effort, or and So they have a big challenge for a whole area that requires building in quality and equipment uptime and achieving breakthrough productivity objectives, and it's a huge step function improvement. That's usually where they start, and at that starting point, their main targets for learning are the senior leaders and a few facilitators, coaches internally, to just seed the company, to get them started. And at that point, the daily huddles don't matter, and the work groups don't matter as much as getting these people to change their thinking and to learn and to understand what's possible. And then they begin to spread it down in the organization. And as I said at Herman Miller, it was 3 years before Mr. Oba asked, how are you going to engage your team members? And then at that point, they started thinking about all the different ways to engage team members. And then the work groups became absolutely critical to that process of engaging the team members, but it was after the management already understood the basics of lean and were using it, and they had examples of it and they believed in it. So I would say it's, the best way is start at the top, get a basic understanding, get a strong commitment, and then begin to develop your work groups. And then what they did at P&G was they developed the self-sufficient work groups at the working level, and then after that, then they began to develop cross-functional work groups for things like product development, which is key in Procter & Gamble. They're constantly introducing new products. So they began to use cross-functional teams, using learning that they learned on the shop floor. So it's kind of interesting that learning from these hourly employees in production end up informing how to train MBAs and professionals in how to conduct an effective product development process.
I just want to ask Jeff, if you apply basic Kaizen and PDCA, what typically tools do you use to standardize, and how do you exactly standardize on those improvements you get from the Kaizen and the PDCA?
Well, again, that depends. It depends on the problem and on what you're trying to accomplish. In some cases, if it's a repetitive task, like an assembly line job, you're actually standardizing the work itself done by that manual worker on the assembly line. If it's a procedure, such as cleaning a machine, then you're standardizing the process of cleaning, or say changing over the machine. If you're going to be changing over a room in a hospital between patients, you'd be standardizing on that process of changing over that room. So you're not standardizing a whole person's job, you're standardizing a procedure. If you're in product development and you're experimenting with different materials, you might be standardizing on some specific level of steel quality required. So you might have a standard for the product or for the material. It could be a technical standard. So what you standardize will depend. The reason for standardizing it is so that what you learn gets captured in future practice and doesn't disappear after you learn it and move on to something else. The best standards are standards that are being reviewed on a regular basis and updated, and also if it's a work standard for how we do the work, and the work situation is different in different locations, then you want local teams to develop their own standard work, the actual sequence of tasks and things like that. There may be some standards for maintenance for the sharpening of the tool and how sharp it needs to be and at what point you change the tool and things like that. But how we divide up the work amongst us and who does what, we can figure out at a local level and then standardize in our work group and then improve upon that. So there's different things you standardize, but also there's a risk of over-standardizing to the point where you kill Kaizen.
Thank you, Johan. And Thank you very much, Jeff. Everybody, if you want to take yourself off mute, say thank you to Jeff. Jeff, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in a month's time. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Thanks for joining us.